Let me tell you something. People are here.
It's never forgery. You said it's forgery.
Say it.
Oh, video.
Where is the
It's a
stamp?
forgery.
Where is the stamp? Where is the stamp?
Where is the stamp?
We are coming. It's a forgery, right? No stamp. It's a forgery, right? No stamp. I say it's a forgery. It's a forgery.
And you're welcome to Fact Sheet live on ETV, live on NISIM 95.9, live on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Our handle is ETV Ghana. The clips you just saw tonight are clips of the happenings on the campus of the University of Ghana, where aggrieved students and concerned students of the Commonwealth Hall clashed with the police, who prevented them from entering into their halls. If you remember, somewhere last year in August, there was a clash between students of Mensa Saba Hall and then that of the Commonwealth Hall, the Vandals they call themselves. This degenerated into violence, and then it became a subject matter for the nation to talk about, because the University of Ghana took some drastic decisions, which I'll remind all of us, per the statement they put out there. The students went to court, sought an interim injunction against the decision of the university. Now, let me share with you quickly what the decision of the university was, and then it will set the tone for our conversation tonight. And I'm reading for you just some few paragraphs so we can have ample time to discuss the issues. Now, the university released a statement that was on the 15th of August 2022, and they stated, the headline of that statement was University Council decisions on clashes between students of Commonwealth and Mensa Saba halls. And these are some of the fine details in there. It says, management of the two affected halls are to be held accountable for their actions and inactions for the persistent riots. The hall master and senior tutor of Commonwealth Hall have not exhibited sufficient willingness and ability to hold students of the hall accountable for their actions in the recent violent clashes. These officers should therefore, in the interim, be relieved of their duties while management works with the security services to investigate the clashes and works towards finding lasting solutions to the tensions between students of the two halls. The Junior Common Room, that's the JCR president of the Commonwealth, and then Mensa Saba halls should be referred to the disciplinary committee for junior members for their actions and inactions leading to and after the riot. Management is in the process of implementing the decisions of council and is providing assistance to the Ghana Police Service in their investigations to identify the perpetrators. The police are assisting management to ensure that the implementation of these actions does not lead to further rioting, and then is therefore there will be a presence of the police officers on the university's campus. And this is just a summary of the statement which came from the University of Ghana. And one would have thought that with the matter being in court and then the court granting the injunction sought by the students, we would not be here having to have a conversation about fresh riots and violence on the campus of the University of Ghana. This time around, not between students and students, but between students and then the law enforcement agency, which is the Ghana Police Service. What really is happening on the University of Ghana campus? It has to do with the welfare of students. It has to do with the accommodation of students. It has to do with how students are displaced as a result of the decisions of the university. If again, we can cast our minds back, the old vandals, that's those who have gone through the hall, protested how the university was handling the situation and felt that injustice was being perpetrated against the students. Tonight, we're doing students' politics. We are discussing students' issues and how we can have an amicable resolution of these issues on the campus of the University of Ghana. We'll quickly go to the phone lines and speak to Michael Mensah, who is a level 300 student, to throw more light on the development on campus. Michael, it's good to have you tonight on the show.
Thank you very much.
I'm hoping you're doing well.
Yes, please.
All right, so bring us up to speed with what happened on campus today.
Okay, thank you very much. I must say I'm very honored to speak here tonight. Yes, so what happened today, earlier today, was, I would say, was a total mess on campus because I heard that Commode boys were asked to leave, Commode, and then the issue was sent to court, and then there had been a ruling that the boys are supposed to go back to their hall. But then I think they moved in their numbers today to the hall only for them to, get there and then know that there had been security men, armed men, that has been instructed by management to come there and then sack the boys from the place. But then I think it was kind of a banter between the boys and then the policemen, because they were saying that they were not expecting what policemen or armed men there, because this is, we are on campus and then it is not right to see armed men around. It even intimidates students as well. So what happened was that, or what I saw, because I was passing by, and then what I saw was there was this police officers that wanted to, push the boys away, and then in a way, I would say that the boys were also trying to defend themselves. So that was what happened. That was what I saw. Okay. And then it started with the arrest up and down.
So were there any exchanges between the students and then the police? Did you witness any exchanges in terms of maybe a fight or an assault or anything of that sort?
I would say it was rather coming from the police to the students, not the students or exchanging, that's with them.
Now, let's talk about this injunction that the students were supposed to have secured, because I'm reading here that indeed, and that's a city story where court placed an injunction on the UG's outside residential policy. Now, in the enforcement of this injunction, which leadership of these students went to the hall, if you know?
Come again, please.
I'm saying that in the process of enforcing the interlocutory injunction secured by the students, how was this enforcement going to be done?
I'm not really getting the last word clear, sorry.
I am talking about the enforcement of this injunction that the students sought from the court, which they got.
Okay.
The implementation of that injunction, the process is what I want to understand. That how were they
Okay.
going to ensure that this was upheld?
All right. So what I'll say is, it was supposed to be the management. I mean, releasing a communique to every student and then to students of Commonwealth Hall that court has ruled, and as such, they are supposed to go back to their halls. That is what I think was supposed to be done. But management didn't do that. That was why the boys also, I mean, took this step in going to their halls.
But generally, give us a sense of how frustrating it's been in terms of securing accommodation for students who, prior to this decision by the university, were lodging in these halls.
Come again?
I'm asking, give us a sense of how it's been like trying to find accommodation outside of campus.
Yeah, finding accommodation outside on campus honestly is a hectic one, because students, I mean, just I can say not less than or no more than 50% of students of the total population on University of Ghana have accommodation. Because getting accommodation on campus right now, we have students more than I don't want to. I mean, I want to get my figures right, but then pardon me on that. But then not more than 50% of them have accommodation on campus as I'm speaking to you now.
Anyway, Michael, I'll thank you for making time to speak to me tonight on the show. I will get back to you later on for us to continue the conversation, but I'm grateful you made time to join me tonight.
Thank you very much.
And that Michael Mensa joining us. He's a level 300 student, sharing with us an eyewitness account of what he saw happening on the campus of the University of Ghana. But as I mentioned earlier, these frustrations are not ones that are being shared only by the students, but the old vandals have been expressing their dissatisfaction with the happenings on the campus, especially to do with their hall. And so tonight I'm joined by Kweku Bodu, who's an old vandal, to share his views with us as to this development which has happened on campus. Kweku, it's good to have you in the studio tonight. I'm hoping you're doing well. What do you make of what has happened on campus today?
Well, thank you. Unfortunately, we must say that what we are witnessing in our view, and we believe in the views of all objective observers, amounts to what you cannot help but describe as an abuse of the administrative powers that the university has been entrusted with. We are witnessing a management leadership that is completely devoid of any morality. Let us contextualize the issues a little bit. There was an incident on the university campus. In your capacity as managers, you constituted an investigative committee into the matter. Now, before the committee could get anywhere with these investigations, you met out punitive measures. Now, people ask, on what basis are you punishing people when your investigative committee is still working? Indeed, as recent as last week, the university was busy issuing letters to people they believed were involved in the said incident. So why are we here? On what basis are you punishing people? The second question was that if some people, and when you look at some of the recordings, you can see just a handful of people, some 10, perhaps 30 students were involved in the said incident. Why then are you implementing a decision that is punishing thousands of students in both Commonwealth and Mensa Saba Hall? Why not identify, consistent with principles of natural justice, with procedural justice and so on, identify the people who were engaged in the clash and then punish them? You would agree that if the university had allowed its investigative committee to finish its work, it would throw light and bring clarity to bear as to who was involved and who was not involved. So why are thousands of students who have been legitimately assigned to Commonwealth and Mensa Saba halls, who have been going about their legitimate duties and studies, why are they now suffering for the so-called sins of a few? The other disturbing fact has to do with the fact that the university has failed so far to establish the identities of those they claim were involved in the clash. And even more worryingly, some representatives of the university have admitted that some of the persons they have identified so far are not even students. So it is entirely plausible, at least theoretical at this stage, to say that if we allow the investigation to run its course, we may come to the conclusion that the people who were involved in the clash were not even from University of Ghana to begin with. Now, that to wrap up, that in my view exposes what is at the heart of the whole issue, which is the rot and the mismanagement in the university. Because you have a public university that is not providing enough security. You have a public university that makes it possible for people to come and do whatever they want. And for me, that is really the conversation. How the university has failed to provide security on campus.
These are based on unestablished facts as to whether these were students or non-students, because this is information which cannot be verified because the identities of these individuals you are referencing has not been ascertained.
Absolutely.
So then, the issue about a report not coming out, at the time the incident happened, this was an interim decision. The status quo had to run, the system had to function. And so the decision, the statement which was issued on the 15th of August 2022, it was clear that it stated that in line with section 16.2 and then 22.1a of the University of Ghana Act 2010, Act 806, and Statute 49I of the University Status, which enjoined the University of Ghana Council to safeguard the good name and values of the university and enable the University of Ghana Council to make arrangements concerning the internal organization of the university, which it considers necessary, the council took the following decisions. Let me just go through them one by one. It says that no events organized by students should be held for the remainder of the 2021-2022 academic year without the express approval of the Dean of Students of Affairs. Do you agree to this?
Well,
do you subscribe to this?
That students, no events,
no activities should happen on campus. Do you subscribe to this decision?
I have serious issues with it.
Okay.
I mean, currently as we are speaking, there are programs that are being held at the university campus. There are religious programs, there are academic programs.
That is post the implementation of these actions.
Oh, absolutely,
yes.
absolutely.
But I'm saying that in the heat of the event, when this decision was taken by the university to calm the system, that no activities must happen on campus, did you agree with them? Or do you agree with them? With the benefit of hindsight.
Personally, I do not, because it just doesn't solve the problem in any way. You see, if you are familiar with the terrain of the University of Ghana campus, when clashes like this do happen, they are typically isolated events. Now, what you need is to be in touch with the student leadership and the student governance systems. If you do that, I promise you, you would be able to identify the students who engage in that clash.
But you agree with me that this is not the first time we are having a conversation about Saba and then
Absolutely not.
This is not the first time.
Absolutely not.
And so I asked the question that immediately after the implementation of these interim measures by the university, but for what happened today, have we had any incident like that since last year? We haven't.
No, but you see, that framing is specious. Now, first of all, we must admit that clashes are not a peculiarity of University of Ghana campus. Indeed, Komoto and Mensa Saba Halls hardly engage in these clashes. You would agree with me that in our democratic experimentation process, political parties do clash. In fact, I recall a situation where not long ago, the head of a church stormed the media house because he said they had published some unsavory things about and attacked the people there. So at this stage in our, if you like, anthropological development as human beings, violence is part and parcel of society. What is important is how it is managed. So it is not a peculiarity of Komotho and Mensa Saba.
But the interesting thing is, as you broaden the conversation about bringing it to the national scene, for instance, Boko now as we speak, instantaneously as these developments happen, some immediate actions ought to take place to ensure that it doesn't fester and it doesn't go out of hand. And so with what had happened on campus, the university sitting down, thinking through, decided that these are actions that they felt ought to have been taken at that time to calm the system so academic activity would continue. And so if the university agrees that, okay, there shouldn't be any activities, you and I have been on campus before, and we know that it is these whole weeks activities, it is these faculty activities that sometimes degenerate into some of these clashes that we see on campus. And so for me, though I'm not supposed to have an opinion in this conversation, but I believe that it would have, at that moment, calmed the system down, although you share a contrary view. But bringing it to now, let us say the courts have even ruled in the favor of the students. There is an execution process. After all, the students were represented by a legal team. Absolutely. And so you would expect that the students would utilize the legal team to ensure that the execution of this injunction happens. Absolutely. Should that not have been what we would have seen?
Absolutely. I am in complete agreement. It is important for us to frame the issues that happen today on campus quite appropriately. Now, our information, our intelligence, and reliably so, leads us to believe that what you have now were, some stranded students. Bear in mind that the university, implemented this policy, that even when the initial injunction was secured, the university did not revert to the status quo ante. The university maintained the process. Now, that has created a situation where thousands of students have been stranded because, remember, there's an economic implication to the decision. They are removing students from their traditional halls, which are very affordable, and forcing them to enter into these hostels, some of which cost about 4 times the cost of the traditional halls. So suddenly students appear on campus, they realize they cannot make payments, and they do not know what to do. And then some of them were allowed to temporarily stay in these hostels. As at close of Friday, we got information that they were being evicted and they were being chased out. So what you had today was a crisis of stranded students who had been pushed to the hall, who had been disappointed, who have had their trust reposed in the university broken, and who walked towards the hall to claim information.
But does that guarantee taking the law into your own hands?
They did not take the law into their own hands, and we challenged the university to bring the information and the evidence that suggests that.
But you already have admitted that there is a procedural way in handling the execution of even a court ruling. Absolutely. If it goes in your favor.
Absolutely.
Did they exhaust all those processes, if I may ask?
Well, that process is ongoing. We believe that the representatives of the universities were in court. They sat there when the ruling was given. It is up to them to advise the management and for them to do the right thing.
Yes.
But we are trying to make a distinction between what happened in court and what happened on campus today.
Indeed.
What happened on campus today were students who have been stranded, who went to the hall to claim information, and who were brutalized by the police. Isn't it interesting that when the said clashes happened
let me
last
pause you for a second, because one of the clips that we watched just a few minutes before we started the conversation, you could hear the students in the background with their court ruling telling the police officers they are here to execute the ruling of the court. And so it brings us not necessarily to the issue of accommodation, but it brings us to the issue of the execution of the ruling of the court. And so it's not about what you say is accommodation frustration, but it's about students deciding that the execution of a court ruling must be done by them, and that is not a process.
Well, I agree that it's not a process,
Yes.
but that may have been the view of one person. We cannot use that.
No, but we had about 2 people speaking to the police officer holding the document.
That is still true.
Yes.
You would agree that court proceedings in this country, unless determined by law, are open proceedings. So people may have gone to the court, they may have heard what the court has said, and they may have picked issue whether, in debates with the police or with hall management. I think that's a side issue. I think the main issue, what we had today, was that a lot of students went to the hall to gain information because they had heard.
But they had their information already. They were holding the document.
My point is
you
that...
remember that the police officer asked them, is this a signed document? You heard that?
Yes, but
yes.
I mean, there were a lot of conversations that were captured in the videos. My emphasis is that the students in their numbers went there to gain information, because why? The university has not sent any communication via their student accounts and
but
so on.
The students had a legal representation in court.
Yes.
To defend them.
Yes.
And so if they have any information at all, it's their legal representation they should be speaking to.
Yes, but that does not...
And then the leadership of the students as well.
Absolutely, absolutely.
And so if they are looking for information, the information is not in the hall. The information is with their legal representation, and then as well, their student leadership.
Well, not necessarily, because it's the university that is running the school. If the
Yeah.
university has not put official communication out there, how are the students supposed to know what's
Yeah, so
happening?
you ask your lawyer.
Yes, but...
Lawyer, we went to court, if I may. We went to court, and the court granted what we took to them. And so what are the processes? How many days before execution? What are we going to do? It is for the students' leadership to then pass on this information to the people they represent, not necessarily for the students, to be found on campus at the hall with a supposed document from the court to execute.
Yes, none of the intelligence that we have gathered so far, and I would want to be convinced that students were there to execute. That idea itself is a bit ridiculous. A student cannot execute anything.
Well,
the school is not run by students.
As much as we may not have any, documentary evidence to that effect, but this video is present, it is current, and it captures.
Yes, but
it captures some students who were saying that is their reason for being there. So between you and then the student I saw on TV, I'd rather choose to believe that student I saw on TV.
But you see, that is where we have to be careful. And we have seen the university do this many times. The framing of the issues is so paramount. If some student who is aware of the court processes last week goes to the hall to find information and engages in a conversation or a banter with a policeman and references what the court said, how does that amount to students showing up there to execute the court decision? I'm saying that sort of framing is misleading.
Let me issue a caveat that this position I am holding is not the view of the university.
Absolutely.
It is my own questions I'm asking as to what I feel.
Absolutely.
But it's not the representation of the university.
Absolutely.
I want to make that clear.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I did not think it was. I'm just saying that, that sort of framing is problematic because remember that there are still administrators in the hall. There are still people who are temporarily holding the positions of, hall masters, senior tutors, and so on. And they are still the rightful persons who can give out information about the official position of the hall. Indeed, a couple of weeks ago, as a concerned person, when I heard of the disturbances, I went straight to the hall and I spoke to the senior tutor and got first-hand information. Because you see, there's also a lot of misinformation. And so I do not find anything wrong. I find everything responsible with students going there seeking to find information. And this claim that students were seeking to be lawless, it is completely untenable. Why? A couple of weeks ago, we had these same students in their masses demonstrating on the streets of Accra in what was described not by me, not by the youth vandals, not by anybody sympathetic to the cause of the students, but by representatives of government and the police as one of the most peaceful demonstrations they have seen so far. So these same students who were on the streets a couple of weeks ago, cladded in red, hand in hand, peacefully walking, they did not even litter the streets. Today we want to demonize them that they are lawless. That is ridiculous. They have expressed the fact that they were aware of what happened in court last week. Now, the university had not sent any official communication. Look at the speed with which the university issued a release today when the issues on campus started. What prevented the university from issuing such a release last week to clarify for the student body that we know some of you have gone to court, that we are aware of the court ruling, that these are the processes that are going to happen? Why leave them in limbo? Also bear in mind that from Friday over just this past weekend, the university went evicting any student sleeping in any room for which they have not made payment. And I have also supplied the information that some of these hostels for which the students are being forced to move in are costing as much as 3 times, 4 times what they were paying in the traditional halls. So I do not think that we can set aside the human frustration, the state of frustration, the state of suppression, the state of doubt, the state of chaos in which these students are. If you've been a student before and you know how difficult it is sometimes to even feed yourself in the course of a day, not to mention how to pay your school fees, you would appreciate that these are really, really troubled people. I have seen some articles suggesting that students in their thousands for the first time are deferring their programs. Why is that happening? We had suggested that policies such as this are inimical to the educational interests of students, and that indeed it was possible that a lot of students were going to defer because they simply could not pay.
Right.
That is what we are seeing.
When we come back, there are 2 critical issues we'll have to discuss before the show comes to an end. One has to do with the obvious, very obvious interest of old vandals in the affairs of the running of the university. And then 2 has to do with the issue of students and how much they have to pay for hostels. For me, KNUST, I believe my year group, by the time we were leaving, they had introduced the in, out, out, out policy, if I collect correctly. I think it was in, out, in. Yes, when we finished, it was in, out, in. I don't know about the University of Ghana, but when we come back, I'll ask you a question which has to do with that policy of either an in, out, in or in, out, out, out thing, which has to do with hostel arrangements. And so I encourage you to follow us. It's all about student welfare, the plight of students at the University of Ghana, Commonwealth Hall, and then Saba Hall, where the male students were sent out of their halls, their traditional halls, and then that of the Commonwealth Hall were also sent out, and the violence which broke out on campus today. We'll be right back. And you're welcome back. We're discussing happenings on the campus of the University of Ghana where students clashed with the Ghana Police Service. Let me put it rightly. Some students, aggrieved students of the Commonwealth Hall, clashed with some police officers who were there to maintain peace and order on campus. So let me just quickly dash the phone lines. I'll come back to you, Kwaku. But let me just dash the phone lines and speak to Bernard Odo-Techi, who is also an old vandal. He's an economist, and pick his thoughts on this development. Bernard, it's good to have you tonight on the show. Hello, good evening.
Me?
Yeah, Bernard, good evening.
Yes, good evening.
How are you doing?
I'm great, and you?
I'm doing well, thanks for asking. So I see that you have developed an interest in the conversation we are having. And it brings me to a question which I was going to put to Kweku after the break. And that has to do with why old vandals are so much interested in anything to do with Commonwealth Hall. So much so, 50 or 20 or 30 years after finishing the university, they want to know what is happening in their hall. Why?
Good evening to the viewers of UTV globally. And if people are listening to, I also share my greetings to them. Let me commend my comrade and brother on the platform. He made Kwaku for the yeoman job he's putting up over there. We are solidly behind him in spirit because with Father Bakus, you won't get it wrong. You've asked a very killer question that goes to the heart of vandalism. Look, you can graduate from University of Ghana, but you can't graduate from Commonwealth. So the only university in the world where people graduate and they don't graduate is Commonwealth Hall. It's a classless society, all year rounder. We love ourselves. It's like asking why God is still keen on people going to heaven. Because that is the kingdom they belong to. Look, Commonwealth is more like a religion. Vandalism has bad religion that has produced former presidents, ministers, MP, DCs, are still businessmen and men of God. So the reason people are like myself, Kwaku Boadu, and a host of others are so much attached to Commonwealth is that the whole have planted in us certain virtues, certain values, certain inalienable values that we can't do away with it.
Is that not where the problem is? Knowing that present-day students on campus know that they have a sudden backing of, lawyers, of economists, of doctors, and former presidents, and so they can do whatever they want on campus.
It is the opposite. It is the opposite. That is why when students are churned out and they go out there in the real world of work, and you want the best lawyers, the best MP, the best doctor, you find them within the vandal fraternity. Look, vandalism is about killing the vices of society. What are the vices? The vices is about injustice, unfairness, making education a prison for the rich. These are the very fundamental things that a pure vandal, born of a man and a woman, will stand up to speak against it. What are we talking about? Look, on 26 October 2022, University of Ghana took a decision. In our candid view, we felt that the decision was whimsical, undemocratic, unconstitutional, preposterous, and unfair. We could have resorted to violence to challenge that decision. But respecting the dictates of the 1992 Constitution, what did we do? We invoked Article 21 of the 1992 Constitution, which is about fundamental human rights. We then proceeded to court. And in Article 1 plus 1 of the 1992 Constitution, sovereignty resides in the people. If we talk about judicial power, look, if we take the executive, parliament, and the judicial power, the very fundamental power that ensures maintenance of law and order is the judicial power. Why did we proceed to court? We proceeded to court because we felt that a certain decision taken by the university management, like I said, was undemocratic, unfair, and preposterous and whimsical. At the end of the day, full trial is ongoing, but the court of competent jurisdiction has awarded to us two injunctions. First was an interim injunction, and secondly, interlocutory injunction. In that interlocutory injunction, the court is restraining the university and its assignees and agents purporting to carry on any further activity to put the authority and maintain the status quo. What is the status quo? The status quo is that all continuing students, second, third, fourth year, should be allocated their rooms. I'm asking one simple question. Is it too hard for university management to maintain the architecture of Commonwealth? In any case, what would the Vice Chancellor lose at all if Commonwealth remains? In any case, what will she gain if she punishes students to go out there and pay for exorbitant hostel fees? Let me give you very important statistics. As we speak today, some private hostels are charging as much as 9,000 to 12,000 for academic year. My brother, we live in an economy whereby, as we speak today, domestic debt is the order of the day. People cannot find 3 square meals a day. There are students coming from poor background, some from Bono region, Ashanti region, Central region, Northern region. That on a very good day, it would be an impossibility to raise 12,000 to pay for hotels, not to talk for academic for the students.
Right, hold on
so
1 second for me.
Bernard,
stay with me. Hello, Bernard. Yes, stay with me. Bernard, stay with me. There are a few questions I would want to ask you. Unfortunately, we have very short time left. But this issue about, students being sent to the hostels and it being exorbitant and very expensive. Like I said, forgive my lack of appreciation of current issues, but is it not obvious that virtually in all the universities, they are running either an in, out, out, out system or an in, out, out, in system? And so obviously at any point in time in your life as a student, by your first year when it ends, you definitely have to go and look for a hostel facility. Is that not a pertaining case at the moment?
Well, that used to be the case on University of Ghana campus. By the time I was leaving campus, the policy had changed. So once you got in, you remained. Once you got into a traditional hall, you remained.
All right, but let me put that question to Bernard, but sure. I'll come to you. Bernard, so you may have knowledge about this. So if at any point in time, maybe 2 years of a student's life, he or she would have to go out. I'm operating with the mindset that there is an in, out, out, in policy that's running on the University of Ghana campus. I don't know. If that is the case, it means that every student will be in 2 years and out 2 years. So obviously, right, you would have to prepare for some private hostel arrangement. Not so.
Okay. Now, there is a huge danger, which is inimical for growing student leaders and future leaders of the country. Let me tell you why. If the university goes ahead and implements its current residential policy, the implication strictly is that you are going to deny student leadership in Commonwealth at SRC loose from Commonwealth because, according to the Act of Parliament, Regulation and Statute of the University of Ghana, people can only contest to be JCR president and executive when they are in their 3rd year. I repeat, according to University of Ghana statutes, people can only contest for position in their hall and attempt to live in the university when they are residential status of their hall and in their 3rd year. Can you hear me?
I'm with you.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I'm listening to you. Bernard, go ahead.
Good. If we allow this residential policy to thrive, the implication is that in the this academic year, the next 2 academic years, we wouldn't have student leadership in Commonwealth. Secondly, if any students of Commonwealth want to contest for any position in the SRC in NUCS, because we don't have students at those strata level, it will be very difficult to get students from Commonwealth serving at the GA level. So this policy will kill student activism, will kill student leadership, and we think that it is hard that the university management sit back and do a deeper self-introspection and consultation and realize that the policy is unfair, it was not well thought through, it's very unpopular, and the earlier they withdraw the policy, the better.
Well, Bernard, quickly, before I end with you, this point you made about, student leadership and the rules of engagement of the hall, where a student has to be in the 3rd year, does it necessarily stipulate that the person must be a resident of the hall or he must be assigned to that hall?
You see, this argument by the university management about whether they are assignees or residents, it doesn't wash. What is imperative is that you are denying the right of thousands and hundreds of students their right to be in the hall. That is a bone of contention.
Hold on one second, Bernard.
They went to court to raise this argument.
Hold on one second. Bernard, so what you're telling me is that if a student is assigned to, let's say, Commonwealth Hall, that student in the third year can contest a position in the hall, not so?
You and I know when it comes to student elections, people want to sit who they've lived with. And there's a certain culture that when you live in the hall, it is built in you. Why do you think that if you look at the laws of Ghana, people are not supposed to be dual citizens before they become MP or ministers? There's a sense in it. So the reason why people would love to be in the hall is that there's a certain growing culture whereby you are taught to be vivacious or truthful, neighborly, the affable and loyal. These are the very fundamentals we want to grow and build in the student growing up. And we think that if we throw away this culture to the dustbin, these relevant tenets we live by from 1967 to today will get lost. And some of us want to state that we are going to fight this issue with logical conclusion, and we will make sure that finally Commonwealth will stand.
But you agree with me, Bernard, that culture is dynamic and culture evolves. And so if the culture is evolving with the times, we flow with it. Not so.
Making culture dynamic doesn't mean punishing people. For example, it is alleged that there was a clash between Sabah and Commonwealth, and you set up a committee. If you want culture to be dynamic, let the committee exert their job and punish the real culprit, the real offenders of the law. Do you visit the sins of a father on innocent son?
All right.
Will you, as a brother, visit the sins of a father on innocent son? That is what preposterously the university is seeking to do. And we think that it is illogical, undemocratic, unacceptable. And wherever it matters, we vandals, old and current, will fight this issue to its logical conclusion.
I'm grateful, Bernard, that you joined me tonight.
I'm grateful too.
And I can sense the fire in you as an old vandal sharing your frustrations with us live on the show. But, you know, the argument about leadership and all, I'm also a proud Spartan. I'm coming from, you know, the Independence Hall. And we are also well-bred, fine gentlemen who hold positions in this country, though we run the system, which was an in, out, out, in system. So, back to that argument. But before that, let me just quickly link to a video of, you know, what happened on campus so that it will keep our viewers and our viewers updated, and especially those who are watching us live on Facebook.
I beg
And welcome back. The happenings on the campus of the University of Ghana today. Kuku, we have 3 minutes to end the conversation. There's one quick one I need to ask you. Is it the case that vandals see certain halls as vassals? Is it the case?
Absolutely not. But I just wanted to quickly, you know, put a few corrective informations out there.
Please do.
The first one is that, as you saw in the video, what happened today was not a clash between the police and students. What happened today, evidenced by the video you play and several others, was police brutalizing students who were harmless, who had just gone there to seek information. The videos are clear. The second one is that the policy that the university is implementing, this new version of the in, out, 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 is restrictive to Commonwealth and Mensa Saba halls alone. It is discriminatory, it is prejudicial, and we believe it is actuated by malice.
So for the other halls, what policy are they running?
They maintain, you know,
So you from year 1, you are in the hall,
you
to
are
final
assigned,
year?
Exactly. You know, you have the
So you
option,
be in the hall?
You have the option of remaining or leaving if you want. It is only Commonwealth Hall and Mensa Saba halls that are being, you know, suffering from this particular policy. And it will interest you to know that even in Mensa Saba halls, we have singled out the men. The women will maintain their rights to the hall. It is the men who are going to suffer from this policy.
Does it not give you an inkling as to why that decision was taken, as to the violence and the clashes which have been happening? Because I'm sure, maybe in the university's thinking, I don't know how they were thinking, people who are rooted in the traditions of the vandals know these things, and so there's a possibility of transmitting them to the first years who are coming.
You see, that is why a university has to be scientific. That is why university has to be empirical in its thinking. Because if they were, it will become obvious to them that it is actually the reverse. I mean, when freshmen come to the hall, they come from all sorts of places, all sorts of secondary schools. They come with their own ideas and so on. It takes the continuing students to chaperone them. I recall a very interesting incident where a lady had come into the hall and a certain freshman was trying to speak to her, and the lady sort of ignored the freshman, who then sort of walked towards the lady and was trying to get her attention by. It took a continuing student to draw the student's attention and to tell him that we do not do this in Komodo. In fact, if my memory serves me right, that particular student was punished. So actually, if you were empirical, if you had actually sat down and thought through a proper decision, it would have been clear to you that what you need is to find a way to leverage continuing students to instill in the freshmen the virtues and values of the university and how things are done and how things are not done.
Right.
But for me, and this final point is very critical. You see, today, we have so many problems in our society, from pensioners picketing to an economic crisis. Now, whenever we talk about these things, we do not discuss where they start from. This is where they start from, how you train your youth. These are the people that are going to be running this country in the next 6, 5, 7, 8 years. And this is how you're treating them, brutalizing them, not listening to them, not putting down procedures that can tap into their leadership, not building their youth governments up. We are trying to instill democracy in young people. And you have an investing management, and what does it do? Overnight, it decides that the JCR governments and their legitimately elected constitutions are illegitimate, are non-applicable. That is ridiculous. Now, finally, you wanted to know why OVA members are so much interested.
I got some explanation.
I want to use 2 seconds.
I got some
I want
explanation.
to use 2 seconds.
Please do.
And the reason is this. We love this country.
Yeah.
We are deeply invested in this country. We don't have anywhere to go. We are not going anywhere. We are invested in the destiny of this country. And we believe that there's a direct positive relationship between how we groom leaders, how we train our young people, and how the future of this country pans out. That is why we are invested.
All right. So you said 2 seconds. My time is far exhausted. Forgive me for that. But there are just a few comments that have come through this evening on the show. So this one from Michael from Tamale, watching us all the way from Tamale, sends the message and says there is no in-out, out-out policy or in-out, out in place. This is changing the status of students who were already assigned to the hall. Michael sent that one through. Okay, this one too from Kwamena from Amasaman says, it is just in, out, out, out. Then it means that I can be at the hall in level 100 as a Commonwealth hall student. Then level 200 to 400, I'm out to a private hostel, but I'm still a Commonwealth hall student, and my ID will bear same. For this one, my hall status is being changed to go to a hostel, and therefore I can't even go and contest for any leadership position. This is questioning student leadership of Commonwealth Hall. Kwamina from Amasama, I sent this one through. This one from Agri, also watching us in Accra. Agri says, Summit, the point has to be made to the old vandals that it is their support of the students that is giving them that ego to always be out there challenging the students, the school's administration. They must know that it is this courage that they are putting in the students that is making them behave the way they are behaving. That's Margaret. And there are several other text messages that have come through. But unfortunately, our time is fast spent. Koku, I thank you for joining me tonight on the show. And I'll thank Bernard as well for joining us via phone this evening. And then as well, Michael Mensah, who is a level 300 student, also joining us. Let me say a very good evening to Timothy Kakari and then to the rest of the production team. I wish you the very best of the evening. Good evening.